Deputy Rob.
Cathaoirleach, thank you very much. Minister, thank you for coming into the chamber to take this this topical issue. Anyone who's been out on any scenic landscape in the city or indeed around the country, be it a canal, a riverside, a park, a beach, would be acutely aware of the blight on the landscape that plastic waste can often pose. We are a green country, and we pride ourselves on being a green country, a beacon for tourists, and indeed an increasingly environmental country. It'd be my belief that you and I, and indeed all members of this House and this chamber, would consider themselves perhaps green with a small g or environmental with a small e. Accordingly, the idea of a plastic bottle deposit and rebate scheme tends to carry a vast majority of public support among the Irish public, based on all polling that I've seen, all opinion pieces that I've seen. It seems that over 90% of people that I talk to are in favour of such a scheme. And I know that the Green Party, in a 2017 bill, effectively set forward a deposit and return scheme, which has been somewhat tacitly accepted by many in the House, but has been subject to delays. I know the Library and Research Service, our own Library and Research Service here in the Oireachtas, put together a publication on this in 2018, outlining the potential costs of such a scheme and implementing such a scheme, but also the potential benefits of implementing such a scheme. And they seem to be, to me anyway, to be myriad. The idea of a cleaner environment, the idea of increasing the rate of plastic bottle recycling, granted, they say only by 3%, but still an increase nevertheless, and ultimately a cleaner environment. And I'm not really sure we can put a price on that. So I think it would be accepted that, yes, this implementation would have a cost, but equally, it would have a great benefit also. So ultimately, Minister, what I'm seeking here is an update on your progress with regard to this, perhaps an update on your own thinking with regard to this. The most recent media reports suggest that you have gone back to look at this afresh. We've obviously had a change of minister in this portfolio in recent months. So I'm curious to hear, and indeed I imagine the public are curious to hear, where your thinking currently is with regard to this matter, and if you can give a commitment on this matter. I'm conscious of the day that's in it, Minister. I'm conscious that according to your Instagram, you are a keen baker and a keen cook. So I imagine you're keen to get home on Valentine's Day for your dinner, so I won't keep you much longer, except to end with perhaps an appropriate Valentine's Day poem, if you'll permit me, Cathaoirleach, which is that roses are red, Ireland is green, Deputy. A plastic bottle rebate will keep our streets clean. I imagine the Minister will agree with this, and I'd be curious to hear his updates on the matter. Thank you very much.
Well, it's with great relief that we greet that at home. Deputy Minister, to respond.
I didn't manage to either get the rhyming couple or the scanning of that line, but they are memorable lines. I have to congratulate the Deputy. If I was like Virgil or whoever it was, I would be able to, but sadly, a long time since I was able to do that. No, first of all, just to thank the Deputy for raising this. This is an issue that I have just recently commissioned a study to establish whether such a deposit and return scheme would be a cost-effective measure for achieving the goal that I think we all agree on, which is to reduce plastic pollution and to improve our recycling targets. And you know, I'm very keen to see an effective response to the problem of plastic in use in Ireland. Then the figures would suggest that plastic use in Ireland is nearly 80% higher than in other European countries in packaging. So we have a problem on our hands about the scale of it. So I think we do need to think of not just recovery schemes, but also reduction schemes. As you probably know, one of the first things I did was introduce a ban on the use of single-use plastics across the public service, and that has come into effect immediately within government departments and will be rolled out from March across the public service. And this will prevent any further acquisition of single-use plastics. There will be some stocks, obviously, that are continued to run down. In the difficulty, and it was outlined by my predecessor with the deposit return scheme, is that we do have an existing curbside collection scheme that is achieving pretty high targets, I think around 70% recovery of plastic bottles. We have agreed to a higher target of 90%, and I suppose the issue for us is that we need to see, is this a cost-effective measure before we make it a legal obligation? And you know, while the Deputy rightly cites public opinion as an important indicator of the direction of policy thinking, I suppose as a minister, before you make it a legal obligation with all the cost implications and so on of legal enforcement and action against businesses, and I am conscious that many small businesses went to the committee and said the cost of this would be very significant for them. I think the point that Deputy Nocton made is also valid, that if you take one of the more valuable recovery streams out of the curbside collection, namely plastic bottles, there is the risk that you then create additional cost on households, and you will see an increase in your charges for households. So I suppose to introduce or to decide in a robust way based on evidence, I have taken the step of commissioning work on this so that we can establish A, is it cost effective, B, how should we design it, and that invitation to tender has been published and is available if the Deputy is interested in seeing it. I think we need to also bear in mind that we have very ambitious recycling targets for plastic generally. We've committed we're less than 35% across the whole plastic packaging spectrum at the moment. We need to get to 50% by 2025, 55% by 2030. And I think there are a number of things that we need to consider to make that a reality. There is far too much mixed materials going into the plastic packaging stream that can't be recycled, and we need to address that. So I'm looking at how we can improve our present producer obligation scheme to ensure that A, there's less plastic going into the waste stream, B, that what does go in is more recyclable. So I am looking, if you like, at through the supply chain to come up with initiatives that would be cost effective, but I've by no means ruled out the deposit recycling, the deposit return scheme.
Minister, thank you. Deputy, you have time for a haiku actually here.
Thank you very much, Cahirlock. I did pen a rhyming couplet for the end, so we'll hopefully get this one down on the record and the Minister will be able to hear it. In any event, I'm keen to see an effective response from the Minister. I know that his energy and enthusiasm when it comes to environmentalism is somewhat unparalleled, and I know he's hit the ground running. I was delighted to see he launched the single-use plastics ban in my own constituency, in the Rediscovery Centre in Ballymun, who are doing fantastic work in terms of teaching people about both the inputs and the outputs, and in terms of the impact on environmentalism there. The Minister is absolutely right in what he says there. That said, in terms of the waste providers and the practicalities of how current schemes work, it would strike me, as indeed I imagine it would strike the Minister and the public, that in the instance where I buy a bottle of water or a bottle of Coca-Cola, I don't bring the bottle home with me, generally speaking. There's no real incentive for me to recycle that. I likely dispose of it in a public bin, in a public waste facility. That will not be recycled. There is no prospect of that being recycled. In other countries, in other cities that I go to, if I buy a product in a convenience store, I can dispose of the bottle or the packaging in that convenience store. The existing waste providers don't like this, and yes, they argue that curbside collection costs might go up, and indeed they might well go up. But it seems to me that currently, in terms of practicalities, if I consume a product in the outside world and don't have a chance to bring it home with me, that will not be recycled. There's no prospect of that being recycled. Similarly, waste collectors, the existing waste collectors don't pick up bottles, etc. on the road, so there's currently no incentive to do so, and I believe an implementation of a scheme like this might allow for more recycling. Finally, we'll go for a second rhyming couplet. Roses are red, Minister, violets are blue. Waste providers may not like the scheme, but the Irish public do. And I hope you will reflect on that and act accordingly. Thank you very much.
the Deputy for putting on topical issue. Thank you. And the Minister, you can conclude.
Yeah, no, I first of all, thank the Deputy again for putting down this. We will have evidence, I hope, in the very near future on the merits of this, how, if it is the right thing to go, how we should design it, and whether there are any, if you like, strengths or weaknesses that we need to take into account from what has happened in other countries. We will await the return of the completion of that work. But in the meantime, I will be proceeding to look at other measures that can improve the way in which we handle plastics, in trying to achieve a more, as they say, a circular economy where we have less waste to dispose of and pay greater respect to the resources we're using.